What is it about being with family that makes talking about someone's weight or appearance, remarking on how much food they do or don't eat, or talking about diet and exercise a good topic? Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Kira Wackett. Thanks for joining me for another video as we work to empower and equip you with the confidence and skills to write your own story so that you can live a life on purpose. Today we're going to be talking about how to deal with those uncomfortable situations where friends or family talk about diets, food, or what we look like to help us find ways of responding more effectively and without leaving us feeling angry, hurt, and resentful. If I could solve this for you, none of us would be here. Thinking about seeing people we aren't even sure if we like, worried about what they'll say, or the looks they'll give us for how our bodies show up in this space, or for the choices we make on how to fuel it while we're there. Unfortunately, none of this is in our control. And in fact, trying to control it only makes it worse. Instead, we have to shift our focus to what is in our control. How can we respond in those moments? How will we label these experiences? How can we validate our feelings without getting stuck in them? We need to start first with some radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is about accepting the things that are not in our control and not spending time or energy trying to change them. I'll put a link to a video that I did on this very concept in the notes, so be sure to check that out at the end. But for now, let's talk specifically about this situation and some things that we can't control. First up, what someone else says. Even if we ask someone not to talk about something, it's still their choice whether or not they talk about it. 2, how someone responds or reacts to our boundaries. We can assert our needs and wants, but we can't guarantee that others will hear or respect them. 3, there's shame and the way that it shows up. Sometimes it's not about you. Our shame has a significant impact on how we show up in the world, and talking about somebody else's body or food intake is often associated with their own struggles, with their own body image, and with their own sense of self-worth. So I want you to take some time to think about this specifically for you. What else is out of your control when you think about these situations or the people that you stress interacting with in these moments? Now, let's think about the things that are in our control. First, whether or not you even go to an event or a get-together. Sure, it may not feel like a choice, but it is. Obligation only takes hold if we give it power. Otherwise, it's simply someone else's desire or wants factoring in and against our own. Second, how long you stay. You also get to decide your arrival and departure times. You don't have to be accountable to anyone else's schedule but your own. And if you can't shake the sense of obligation to attend but want to limit your time and exposure to triggering situations or people, set a cutoff time and plan accordingly. Make plans in advance so that the pressure to erode your boundaries doesn't overwhelm you when you're there. 3, what you say. From the boundaries you set or the subject matter you talk about, you get to control what you say and how you respond to what others say. And remember, this also includes the right not to say anything. Sometimes silence is the greatest element of power. We also can control who we do engage with. This is another tricky one that often gets confused with obligation. But to be clear, you don't have to interact with anyone just because they're at the same event as you are, or because they attempt to engage with you. There are ways to do it that are still kind and respectful, but you don't owe anyone your time and energy if they don't make you feel seen, safe, and respected. You can also control what you do. Whether this is in response to what someone says or does, or how you carry yourself in general, you have control over your actions. Similar to when we talked about what isn't in your control, I want you to take a minute or two to think about what is. Go specifically through those interactions with people or those experiences that you know that you're going to come up against. Go through the topics that I mentioned and get very specific on the things you can control. As much detail as possible is really going to root you into that and help you feel that sense of empowerment around your power and control in those interactions. And if it's helpful, sometimes I do this simple exercise called a control circle. Essentially what you do is you draw a circle on a sheet of paper. You can get a notebook paper, scratch paper, whatever works for you, and you label it your control circle. So inside the circle, you put everything that's in your control. Outside of the circle, you put everything that is outside of your control. The circle then acts as a boundary or represents a filter for which we can separate what is and isn't in our control and focus on those things that fall inside of that filter. So what do you do when the inevitable does happen? Now you're probably thinking, you don't know my family. I don't have a choice. I've tried to set boundaries, but nobody hears them. And you don't know X. They don't listen to anyone. All of that might be true. I don't know your family. You probably have spent years feeling unheard. People in your family might not listen, or more likely have never been put in a position where they've been made to because people make it okay for them not to. But you do have control. Go back to that list. Go back to your circle. There's a lot you get to control about how you engage and the way you respond when someone does say something. You do have a right to your boundaries, needs, and wants. And you do get to take care of you, no matter how intense, mean, overwhelming, or stressful your family is. So let's say, instead of if someone makes a triggering or hurtful comment, let's say when they make a comment, so that we can adjust and plan accordingly. First, take a deep, full belly breath. And if you can, take a sip of something really cold. These behaviors activate your parasympathetic nervous system and help you come down from that state of agitation that you were so swiftly kicked into when that comment was made. Second, feel your feet connect to the floor. If you feel safe or you're in a position where it's okay to do so, close your eyes and just notice that strength in your connection to the world around you. Root inside yourself and remind yourself the only thing that you can control is how you respond, and that this is ultimately not about you. 3, honor your feelings. Notice the way you feel, physically and emotionally, and validate the pain and discomfort that shows up for you while inviting it to stay in the passenger seat. It's not time for the emotions to drive. They can inform, but if we don't validate and then ask them to stay where they are, what happens is they can consume us, and that's where that agitation kicks in. That's where that reactive or explosive response can kick in, or oppositely, the shutdown response. So let your emotions know that they're gonna get more space to show up later, but they don't need to drive right now. Finally, decide on your response plan. Do you wanna walk away, or are you gonna say something? You're likely gonna feel a need to, or a push to want to ignore it, or write it off, make it okay that they said something, dismiss it, or if you're like me, that reaction's gonna make you want to metaphorically throat punch them and then walk away. None of those responses are helpful. They're reactions. They make your actions about the other person, and they give your power away to them and transport you from your story, where you have control, to theirs. Instead, walking away or responding is the most straightforward way to assert a boundary that this is not something that's okay to talk about and that you're not interested in engaging in these conversations. Most often, I would encourage you to say something, especially if this is the first time that you're setting a boundary around this type of conversation or with this person. This allows the boundary to be an invitation for connection and learning rather than a punishment. Walking away is something that I reserve for people I've had these conversations with before and who've continued not to respect the boundary, or if I would say something, I would feel unsafe in a way that isn't about me needing to challenge it, but is really about recognizing what safety looks like for me. But now you're thinking, okay, fine, I get it, I'll try to say something. Well, what do I say when all that comes up for me in that moment is just wanting to throw my middle fingers up and saying, F you? While that may be an effective way to shut down the conversation, it really only feels good for a moment, and then we just leave feeling like crap. And again, our power is given to the other party. So try some of these instead, and feel free to modify them to make them more specific to you. Things like, I don't talk about diets or weight loss, or please don't talk about X with me, or I'm trying not to focus so much on my body. Would you mind not talking about those things in front of me? Or when you talk about your body or food in that way, it can be very triggering for me. Do you mind if we talk about something else? Another one I really like is, I've been working hard on loving and accepting my body. This conversation feels like a setback. Let's talk about something else. Also saying, I'd appreciate it if you didn't comment on my appearance or what I eat. Or going more specific there, we could say, it's really upsetting to me when you talk about me and my body this way. I know you don't mean to hurt me, and it does. I would appreciate it if you stopped doing this. Or, when you talk to me about my appearance or food, it makes it hard to want to be around you. You could even go a little bit more open and say, it makes it hard to feel safe around you. I'm working on not talking about those things, and it would mean a lot to me if you could not talk about that with or in front of me. And one that I've used a lot of lately is, I've committed to my daughter, or you could say your kids, your partner, your friends, not to talk about weight, food, or appearance. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't talk about those things in front of me or her. And finally, you could always go with the old standby, let's talk about something else. So as you're going through this list, pick a couple that resonate with you and again, tweak them to make them your own. Or as you're hearing them, consider what else comes up for you. What else could you say in those moments that allows you to tell somebody this isn't a conversation you're going to continue to have? And you'll notice that in a couple of those interactions, there's still the invitation for connection, offering a change in subject, which means the subject is the problem, not you as the person. This is a very clear distinction that, again, being assertive focuses on what we're trying to change is the conversation. What we're trying to shift is that dynamic and that interaction. We're not shaming the other person for doing it. We're offering an opportunity for the person to connect with us in a way that allows us both to feel safe. And if you've tried any other comments or found other things to be helpful, as always, put them in the comments below, because we all learn from each other and the experiences that we have, and what fits for us might be super helpful for somebody else. Okay, so let's think about this. You responded in a way that allowed you to take care of yourself and then have an interaction with the other party. You took a breath, got a sip of water, allowed your body to calm down. You noticed what was coming up for you, rooted in your power. You allowed your emotions to have some space to feel validated so you could acknowledge them and then allow them to inform your response rather than dictate it. And then you had this interaction with somebody. You told them what you needed. You said what the boundary is, no matter how detailed you do or don't have. But then let's go back to what's in our control and what's not. So another thing that often happens is we focus on how somebody responds as the matter of whether or not this interaction was successful. But what happens after you say something isn't in your control. How someone else reacts or responds to whatever you say is ultimately on them and doesn't dictate whether or not what you did was successful. If you say something and they react in a way that increases the hurt, pain, or distress for you or for them, then you can walk away. You don't need to accept an invitation to their shame party. Don't let their reactivity rob you of your success. Setting a boundary is always positive, even if someone reacts poorly. And then, after you've given yourself space to validate your feelings, honor that experience, digest it. What data was collected in that interaction? How will this interaction inform the way that we're going to show up in the future, whether it be with this person or with others? And as you all know, writing things down and sharing them out loud is one of the best ways to increase our buy-in and reinforce the work that we're doing. So leave a comment below with your next steps, takeaways, and of course, questions or ideas you have for me so that I can best support you in your journey. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe and save yourself the time and energy to check back for content and get an alert whenever there's new awesomeness to check out. And if you want to stay in the know on all things Adversity Rising, subscribe to my email list. I'll put a link down in the show notes so that you can get easy access to sign up. And on my email list, I share exclusive content that I don't put anywhere else, and it's a great way to stay informed not only about new videos, but new programs, courses, and specials that I send just to my AR insiders. Thank you so much for being here with me today. This is a really hard topic. Working on being assertive and setting boundaries with other people can be incredibly scary, and it takes a lot of effort to help our brain not feel that fear response come in and take over in those moments. Be patient and kind with yourself. And remember, you have the right to author your own story. So take back the pen. See you next time.